Hi, Orange Girl here with another scrapbooking process video for you. I'm working with Flair from a Flair for Buttons, and I wanted to start by showing you this piece of Flair right here. When I got this piece of Flair in the mail, I knew that I wanted to do something using watercolors or something that looked like watercolors and flowers. All of the Flair that I'm going to be using today is from the Watercolors Flair set. Um, it really was inspiration for this piece. So what I did is I went ahead and used my Silhouette Cameo, and I created I used a couple of different files. One was that I just showed you there, I'm going to use, and I'm going to do some stitching. And this one I'm going to do some watercoloring on. So I just replicated the three or four different kinds of flowers onto this sheet, and then went ahead and had my Cameo cut it out, and it's still on the mat here, and I'm going to go ahead and use basically 2 colors per flower. So I sped it up a little bit here, and then I'll speed it up a lot more once you kind of see what I do. I start with a darker color in the center and then a lighter color on the outside, and you could use lots of different colors per flower or lots of different shades per flower. I just chose to do 2, and I do the same with the leaves as well. I use 2 different colors of green. So then I'm using my water brush here, and just a little bit of water is all it takes to get these gelatos working for you. I just went ahead and I color right on the paper, then use the watercolor brush to or the water brush, excuse me, to go ahead and mix it all together and make it look like watercolors. I could use my finger, I could use a baby wipe, anything to get it a little bit wet to activate it, and then it looks a lot like I'm using watercolor. The reason I chose to work with gelatos is because I wanted to work right here on the mat. I didn't want to have to use gesso, and so I didn't want to use a lot of water. And I filled my watercolor pen right before I started this, and I didn't even use probably a quarter of the water in it. So I don't get a lot of warping or anything like that, even though I'm just working on cardstock here. So I'm almost finished here. I'm not, as you can tell, I'm not being super picky about staying in the lines. It doesn't really matter because these are die cuts, so I'm just going to pull them right off anyway. I really like that color that I'm working with there. It's I think it's called Margarita, and it's a really light green with a lot of yellow in it. Okay, so once I get those done, I end up actually using pretty much every one of these flowers, I think. I made extra thinking that I wouldn't use them all, but then, as you see, I end up using most of them. Suggestion is before you go ahead and take this off that you let it dry a little bit, which I did do, but there they are. So there they are, they're ready to go. And I've already off camera done all the stitching because that's super boring to watch. So you'll see the stitching here in a second. So you can kind of see how they look, how these flowers are a little variegated in the color. And that was what I was trying to go for when I used 2 different colors there. So here's my background paper, and I've already done the stitching. I went off the edge because I think I like to do that, and now I'm going to do the same basic process that I did with the die cuts, and this time I'm going to use my water pen and gelatos to go ahead and work inside the stitching. For the big flower here, I'm able to just do it exactly like I did the other flowers, just being a little bit more careful to stay in the lines this time, but it's pretty easy to stay in the lines since it's stitching and it's raised. But when I work with the smaller flowers and when I'm working with the leaves and the stems, I actually don't write right on the page. I use my pen here. See how I do that? And I just touch the gelato on top. So I'm getting a little bit of the gelato onto the tip of the water pen. And the reason I'm doing that is just because it's such a small space, but the reason I pointed it out is so that you can see that there's lots of different ways that you can use the gelatos. You can, sometimes I use the packaging technique even, and I just write or mark, however you want to put that, right onto a piece of plastic packaging and then add water. And it works just like a mist or just like a watercolor. So once I get this finished, then I'm ready to kind of put it all together. And the design is already kind of done for me because I set it up when I set this up in my Silhouette Cameo software. I knew that I wanted the flowers that were stitched over on that left side, and then I was going to go ahead and put the rest of the flowers kind of overlapping and along the bottom. And that's what I end up doing. It ends up, this is one of those times where I kind of had an idea of what I wanted to do, and it actually translated to the page quite well. So now I'm just going to mess around with these flowers a little bit. The picture and the story that I'm telling is we went to Rockford, Illinois over Halloween, and not Halloween, good grief, over the 4th of July. And we went to the Rockford Art Museum one day, and they had an exhibit there called Shark Girl. And you kind of can't see it maybe in the photo, but my daughter is on the right, and she's sitting on a bench next to a statue of a little girl that has a shark head. And there was a whole bunch of different, some were sculptures, some were drawings, some were short movies of this shark girl. Well, when Bee saw this actual sculpture, she said, and it just melted my heart, she said, she sat down like that, and I go, what are you doing? And she goes, I think she looks lonely. And so that's going to be basically my journaling for this story. Is I just using this picture, and the title will be Shark Girl. And then along there for my journaling, I will put her quote and where we were. Pretty simple way to tell the story, but I didn't, I also didn't want a really long story on this because I think just her quote tells the story. And besides that, there's so much going on the page that too many words would just mess up the design. So, and why use more words when less can tell the story just as well? So I don't know if you can see it there, but on the bottom right, I got a piece of gelato, residual gelato, and it's sitting there, and I touched it. And so it is now on the page, and there's no getting that off. And so as I am putting tissue paper behind my photo, I'm thinking about what am I going to do? And I decide to actually add the rest of the flowers. That's part of what I end up doing. And then that pretty much covers it up, I feel like. So I'm adding a little piece of pattern paper behind the photo. I go back and forth as to whether I want it there. I think I end up with it being there. It's from a recent collection. I can't remember which one it is, to be honest. It has a lot of silver in it. I can't think of it. So I'm going back in with I think these are all Shimmers products, Miss, and except for that one is a Heidi Swap Color Shine, and I'm using that blue. I matched the blue and kind of that yellow golden color, a hot pink, and the green. That is Shimmers, and I think the pink and blue are Heidi Swap. And I'm just adding some splatters to the back of the page, just to kind of give some more color throughout. I do leave a little kind of white space in that upper right corner, but mostly I want some color on this page, so that's what I do. And this is pretty much done. The off camera, you can see that I added the words Shark Girl, the title. I believe that comes from Dear Lizzie Alpha pack, Thickers pack. I went through my stash off camera of thickers and tried to decide, do I want blue, do I want pink? But I really liked this font, and it fit in the space really well, and the color matched perfectly, so that's what I ended up using. So as you can see, I'm messing around a little bit here with tangled thread, and I had a little hissy fit there. I am trying out different colors, and I'm not sure. I know I want to add a little color underneath there, but I'm just not sure if I want pink or blue or where I want it. My original idea was to bring some blue up to the top there, but I end up deciding that there's enough blue in the actual Flair button that I don't need the color behind it too. So I use pink. And so I put some thread behind each of the Flair pieces of Flair. I'm going to use those 3 pieces of Flair. And then I also add some thread, I think, behind the photo, kind of by that yellowish orange flower, and then over on that empty spot on the left as well. And that's it. So I really didn't do a lot of embellishment, unless you count all those flowers as embellishment, or I would count them more like my backgrounds. But so I don't use a lot of embellishment because it really doesn't need it. And that's about it. The close-ups are going to be coming up here in a minute. Thanks for stopping by. I hope you enjoy this video. All the Flair that I have, I believe, used on this page is from the Watercolors Flair in the shop. There are some other pieces that match it quite well, so I had a whole stash of them out to use. But I ended up going with these 3, which was kind of my original idea. You know, you go back and forth between trying to decide on things, and a lot of times you just end up doing what you thought in the beginning, and that was what was right anyway. So I have the date and my journaling and the place that we were, and that's it. So here come the close-ups. Thanks a lot for stopping by. Like my video, subscribe if you'd like to see more. If you have any questions, please ask in the comments and I'll respond as soon as I can. Thanks a lot. Have a good day.